Hey everyone, welcome to another Friday live painting session. If I sound a little hoarse today, it's because I've reacted to a couple of shots that I got about a week ago, and I've developed a cold over the week, and so that's it. But I'm going to work on a painters never just sit down, just so you guys know this. Okay, we always work. This is a 24 by 30, and it's a piece of hardboard that I gessoed with kind of a, you can kind of see the tone, similar to a flesh tone, a little bit warmer. I'm painting a barn in a landscape. Wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do today, and then the last minute kind of decided on this piece. So I'm going to kind of lay some lines in here to kind of establish what I want to do. I'm going to crop more like this. I'm going to move some things around. So I may even condense the barn a little bit. So we're going to put the barn about here and about here. So it's a big barn, and the corner of it is probably about here. And then I'll look for the angle of the roof. Always, when I'm on location, I do the same thing. Look for that angle, and then draw that angle. Same here. And draw that angle. And then we'll bring little perspective. It's kind of, I love these old barns that are kind of sagging, as this one is. Center of it's right about here. And it comes down out to here. This probably goes back a little bit because perspective. And then get angle, down. That's the easiest way for people to get perspective. All right. Then we're going to put, there's a front part to this barn. This is where the part that probably relies, needs the most drawing, is the barn. Okay, that's pretty good. The rest of it we can kind of indicate, bring this hill down, let it go behind the barn at this point, and the other hill above the barn at about that point. I'm sketching with the number 2, and I'm sketching with a little bit of asphaltum and ultramarine blue. So trees, nice big tree over here. I'm moving some things around. So just because I want a lot of it that's in here, but I want it to fit into this format. So for that, you just move things around if you need to. Rearrange nature. And get a little, flatten it out here. And then we get this divot down here. There's a lot of extra stuff in here. I don't know how much of it I'm going to put in. Kind of like there's a fence right about in here that's hidden by some, it's probably right about in here. Yeah, it looks like a big fence. It's right down about here. Okay, and that's probably all I'm going to sketch right now. The rest of it I'm going to paint. All right. So then I'm going to, excuse me, start with my trusty gesso brush. And I know the sky is going to be light, and I just have to decide how blue I want to make it. I want to make it a little bit blue, but not outrageously blue. So I mix a little blue, white, and maples together and come in with this, which I think is about what I want. I paint pretty thin in the beginning, almost always. You know, occasionally, if I'm cutting loose on plein air, particularly, and I'm using a palette knife, then I won't necessarily work this thin. But on a quick painting of this scale, it's about the only way you can kind of cover territory. And by thin, what do I mean? there's two ways of thinking of thin. One is where you're rubbing it down, you're almost scumbling it in. And the other is where it's kind of soupy, you've added enough terp. And this is kind of a cross between the two. Yeah, that's approximately what I think I need. Some trees in there, some tree holes. Okay, let's paint. Now, one of the things I want to do, and I thought I'd mention this to everybody, I don't want these darks to be as dark as these darks. I want them to sit back there. So what do? I lighten them. I don't make them as black, so to speak, even though they're not black, but I don't make them as dark. So I'm taking the asphaltum, same color I had for the sky, put it in with the blue, a little bit of green, a little bit of more asphaltum. Make sure I get other tones out. So it looks dark, but it's really not all that dark. And we'll start kind of with this. Again, ultramarine asphaltum. And I think I'm just going to lay the whole mass in. I'm always going to leave some spots, but I don't think I'm going to. The reason if I lay the whole mass in, truthfully, I know that if I run short of time, that I can leave some of that and I don't have to put detail everywhere. Or I don't even call it detail. I don't have to put information everywhere. A little more ultramarine, a little more asphaltum, a little bit more right down here. It's a little on the blue-green side. I threw some alizarin into it just for the heck of it. Okay, comes over here. Goes down. I'm making it go lower. It's almost touching the the tip of the roof, and I'm making it go a little bit lower. So I'm gonna add a little bit of white to that color, maybe a little bit of blue that I was just working with. We're gonna put these trees in right here. A little bit, a touch lighter and a little bit more blue in it. Okay. So let's keep going. This hill, in between this hill here, definitely lighter, more ochre. So I added ochre immediately to the
Drink your tea.
To that color. Oh, that's a pretty good. It reads pretty well. There's some smoke back in there, but that'll be kind of fun to add because that allows me to add a little blue and white to bring it forward. So we're kind of setting all this stuff up. I'm gonna add a little orange to it because some trees sit in front right about here. A little bit more ochre, a little bit more. Let's try that. That's pretty good. I have to be careful. I'm painting into wet paint, which means every time I put the brush down, I'm picking up some of the pigment that's already there. So it's just something you have to be concerned about when you paint into really wet paint.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah. When you paint into it, like this is very wet paint. So if I'm going to put a new color in there, particularly a lighter color, but it's true with even a darker color, you have to be very careful because one of the things that's occurring is as I paint into that color, I am contaminating the color I have in my brush with this color. In some instances, I want them to mix together. And there's some light negatives back in there. I can really have fun with that. Take ochre and we'll kind of put them in here, and then we'll paint some positives on top of it. Positives being tree trunks, things of that nature. Okay. Now we're going to go to the other side. I'm moving back and forth across the piece. We go back with this kind of a greenish tree. It's green because I know it's a tree, but I don't see it as green. That's pretty good. So let's put that in. And then it works its way down. It gets kind of scrubby. So I know I'm picking up that color underneath. So I'm adding more green or brown, and I'll just kind of rub it into this color. I want to put that blue smoke back there, so I don't want to put too much into that. Let's move into these trees. We'll work our way forward. So I'm going with what I see as kind of the shadow, which tends to be cooler, a little bit more blue, right about here. It's probably a little too blue. I'm going to throw some raw sienna into that color. A little bit more brown. It's tending to look a little too green for me. A little more blue. About the same height. Right about here. What I was doing is I was measuring the top of this tree and saying, oh, it's about the same height as the peak of the roof. It's really interesting as I really look into this area. I see warms, I see all kinds of other colors I know I can throw in there. And hopefully we'll have the time. If I have the time, we'll definitely do it. Okay, setting it up. There's a bunch of little trees back in there. Get kind of a weird little warmth quality to them right back. So I just added a little orange to the color I already had, which is kind of, they're brushy types of trees. So you see me just kind of barely using this paintbrush to get the kind of brushy look to the edge of those trees. All right. So we're going to put this color in. I haven't put the lights in, but we're going to get that lighter yellow-green color. So a new little pot. And I have some yellow Hansa out on my palette, which I'm going to use. And some, boy, I'm pretty close there, huh? Let's see what we can get out of it. Get the nice edge. That's the key on this thing, is getting an edge that feels good. So sometimes it's the way you just see I'm using the brush so it's not pushing. Go a little more yellow, a little bit more Naples. I'm going to cough.
Apologize for coughing.
Huh?
Apologize for coughing all the time.
Yeah, if I'm sounding awful, just kind of ignore it, because it's, you know what? I haven't had a cold in about 2 years. And I forgot how crummy they are. I was going to say crappy, but they're awful. But I had it for most of the week. I'm kind of nearing what I think I think is the end. But I've said this before with other colds. You say, well, yeah, it's almost over. 5 days later, it's still kind of so. First couple of days, I felt more under the weather. Did a little bit of painting, but not a lot. So I'm a little behind where I would like to be on my other work. Got to come up with enough variations when you paint foliage with warms, greens, different things like that. So it isn't just a flat blanket color. All right. A little bit in here, but nowhere near as yellow. So but add a little green to it. It's the same color I was just using. Make it a little bit more green. Maybe a little bit more. Okay. Maybe a little white, huh? Breakup of the masses of clumps within the tree. And then up above. If I have the time, I can add lighter and lighter and a lot more of variation in an area like that. Just kind of let the brush do the work. I've mentioned this so many times. If you possibly can, let the brush do the work. If you try and overpower the brush, particularly when you're doing things like foliage, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't come off. So you literally got to almost just let the brush kind of indicate the color, indicate the value, the differerences that are going on. So I throw a little warmth just because I see it. Obviously, because I didn't add it for any other reason. I see a little bit of warmth here and there. So I've got this color in the brush, I might as well use it. Okay. It's got an okay start. I'm going to start in on the barn. I'm about 20 minutes in. We haven't hit the barn yet. I think before I do that, though, I am going to do what I said. I'm going to add blue and white. And I'm going to add that kind of smoke right back in here, the smoke behind those trees. Boy, when you see that, if that's the kind of stuff you can kind of plant away in your memory and use it at another time when you want to separate something. You say, well, there could be some smoke back there. You paint what's behind and then what's on top. What's on top are the trees. So if I need to kind of up in here a little bit, and then it fades.
What brush are you using right now?
It's just that I've just used the gesso brush. That's the only brush I've used so far. So I'm going to start to mask the, let's see, one more thing. I'm going to start to mask the barn in. I do want to hit a little bit of green foliage right there. What happened is I looked around and that area just looked vacant. And I went, okay, that's what it needs. I can see that I need some in here, a little bit more in here, but I can fuss with that later. I want to get the barn laid in. So asphaltum, haven't cleaned this brush. Still working with the same brush without cleaning it. And I got paint on my glasses. I wonder what that smear was. Okay. A little cooler, feels a little warm. Okay. That feels pretty good. And I'm going to go kind of thin. I'm gonna add a little bit more white to this color because I want it a little bit lighter, a little bit cooler. Oh, I like that. Yeah, let's start with that. That's a good color. I'm happy with that color. I like it when I'm happy. Okay, we're gonna go darker. Still haven't pushed my darks as dark as I want to go. These are kind of mid-tone darks. In other words, they're not completely as dark as I want to be. I keep sneaking a little bit more blue and asphaltum in there too. And so all of a sudden I'm quite a bit darker right about there. Okay. Get there. And we will go right there. And I'm not going to put that top in. I think I am going to kind of pull a little bit more light out of that. We'll put some of the boards. The boards are variegated. Now the roof is lighter because this is where the sun is coming. Sun is coming from back here. That's why the front of this is in shadow. It looks like it's kind of low because it's hitting up in here. And then they're getting a few shadows of trees on the roof. But let's start with that base roof, okay? Now, what is that? It's not cold, it's not warm, it's kind of neutral. So I just took Naples yellow to the blue brown I was just using, and I'm going to take a look at it. Yeah, I can live with that. So I'm going to go a little lighter. And I'm going to warm it up a little with the orange, even though it doesn't show it that way. There we go. So a little bit of the cat orange hue mixed into that. A little lighter on the back edge. Added a little bit more Naples. A little light on the front edge. There's a lot of variation in the colors. And we want, as much as I would like to get a lot of variation in the foliage, I definitely want to get it in the barn. I still would like to get it in the foliage, but I don't know how much time I'm going to have to do that. So the main thing is to get enough of it in the barn. Down at the very bottom, it tends to get a little lighter right down here. So let's start it that way because I'm going to add the shadows back on top. Little patch of light in there. Some of that is just weathering. Some of that is just weathering. It's nothing more. Lighter right there. Now, the front part of this shed, I'm going to switch over to say a number 10 flat. The front part of this shed right here is warm. It has a lot of alizarin. It has, and it's not completely as dark as it goes, so it has enough white in it. And I think that's probably about where it is. Boy, I'm really close. Getting lucky, getting lucky. Now, if it comes out too red, I'm just mixing a little blue or green into it just to mellow it out a little bit. Come up with the edge on that right there, and it isn't showing, but I can see it, so I'm making it show a little bit more clearly. And that's one of my goals in this piece, was to clarify the barn from the background a little bit because it was starting to get lost. So we'll stay with that, and we'll get this side of it. Remember what you're doing when you're painting. You're setting up for the next stage. So if it looks like everything's a little dull right now, that's kind of how I want it. I want it to look a little dull in the beginning and then a lot more punchy, for lack of a better word, as we get towards the end. So I'm going to take some darks now, the asphaltum and the ultramarine blue together. So I'm going to place a couple of these darks. There's right at the corner. I definitely want to place a dark right here. I want to place a dark opening right here. This is where you cannot get hung up in any one area. You have to kind of keep looking throughout your whole image. Right back. And maybe another one right about here. I don't place them in exactly the right spot, really doesn't matter. And then some darks here, just some darks. So I'm painting into the wet paint. So I know I'm contaminating it. Nice little dark. All little barns have this little peak hole up here. So it has that. There's a couple here. It's over here. Again, let's just pull a few of these down. Whether I have them in the exact right spot doesn't matter, because you know it's happenstance as to how these boards were aged and weathered. It's not. So we want to start creating the effect. So I'm going to take white with that color. And I'm going to add blue to the white. A little more blue, a little bit more white. And we're going to start in with some of the lighter. Oops, didn't work. I think the paint was too dry. Blue and white. And we're just going to bring in a few of the lighter boards. There's 1, 2. More blue, more white. I wasn't getting the punch that I wanted out of it. That's better. You know, just the way I'm moving that brush like that is simply to give it so the whole board it fades. It starts as one color and you just give enough character going on. And up at the top, who knows why this gets this white up here, but it does. Pretty white, but cool white. Little bit up here. This kind of stuff is where I have fun. I could play with this and really get into how far I want to push it, how much I want to bring to it. You know, I got to keep in mind time and what I'm trying to get done in the amount of time. So I literally can only give it a little bit of the time that I would probably give if I were doing a studio type of painting. And we're going to bring a little bit of right here. And up above, once again, get that light happening right. And a little smaller brush, number 2. And I could use a straight edge, but I don't think I'm gonna, because it's kind of a funky looking barn anyway. So let's put it's about there. Doesn't go all the way down for some reason. Don't know why, just doesn't. So we're getting, just step back because I wanted to see how it was feeling. Feels okay. Don't see any major problems right now. See some areas I want to fix, but don't see any real major problem. So I'm going to go back with the 10. We're going to put some of the shadows in on the roof. We're going to make them cooler and a little darker, obviously. Let's see how dark. Nope, not dark enough. So we're just about 30 minutes into it. And that feels pretty good. Smeared it into the other paint, and that's why it came out a little lighter than I wanted. So I'm going over it one more time. I don't have to put them all in, but I kind of like them coming down from the top and then hitting on the side. And these are, I'm going to hit the negatives one more time, just so you guys know. In other words, I'm just popping these in here, and then I will hit the lights on the rooftop one time. Okay, we're going to leave it at that. Stepping back looks pretty good. I think I went a little too dark here, but with that, I can always come over it and lighten it if I need to. A little bit more down here. I'm going to bring some clarification to the barn a little bit. We're going to do that. One of the things I can see right now when I look at it closely is at this point, this actually goes up higher. I didn't see that before. Now, I didn't have to do this, but I kind of like the variation that occurs. This goes up higher. And what that means is that this edge is more there. Which is fine. That's how you fix things. And you can take these areas and so it falls, well, paint was too wet. Very seldom does that happen. Okay. I'm going to take a few more darks, meaning the blue and the asphaltum together. And we're going to start to add some darker darks into some of these boards. So we're going to bring, but I'm doing this with the number 2. And I can do that kind of stuff as much as I want until I get it where I want it. Obviously, I'm not going to take it probably as far as I want it simply due to time, but I think we'll be able to make it effective, which is really what you're trying to do in this. And I consider this very much a plein air type of an approach because you're playing with time. Okay, let's get the edge of that roof line. Clean it up a little bit. We'll start here. And I kind of like it to, if it does sag a little bit. And as it comes down the other side, same thing. Too dry. I said that because as I started to go over this other paint, it just literally mixed right into it. Okay. That tends to work a little bit better. And we'll just take a little bit of this and work it up and down if I need to. And the same thing is going to hold true down below. I'm going to find some few pieces of board and wood and this kind of stuff you can play with. You can just do it as much as you want. I know I've mentioned that once before, but if I'm redundant, it's because I have a cold. So my synapses are not firing as well as they normally would. I think that's the right term. So all kinds of interesting little things that go on when you really get into it. You know, in the beginning, you're not looking into things and you're not seeing as much. But as you progress on the painting and you take it further and further, you start to look for more things. And so you discover things that are kind of interesting. There's a little couple pieces over in here, a little darker right here. But I don't want it real dark, so I just pushed it right back into the paint that was already there. That lightened it up a little bit. Now, little tiny things that really are going to make a difference here. Let's start to get into some of those, and then we can go back and work on things that I kind of ignored in the beginning. First, let's get the edge of this. And it is sagging. I might have exaggerated a little bit more, but I don't care. I kind of like that. Okay. I'm going to bring some more darks up. Right here, I just see a little bit of other colors coming through. Now, there is light. First, there's shadow, and there's a beam right here, and it's in shadow, and that goes into light. So that's the beam in shadow. Now we're going to take white and Naples yellow for the white, to bring it into light. I take a little medium because I could feel the paint was quite stiff. That's probably the white. And so I'm going to be a little more careful. There it is in light. And I get a little piece of it coming all the way down here. And this starts to fade there. And we get a little piece. Okay, really light. So we're gonna beam right here. No, I don't like that. I want it stronger. And it's a little better. It's still not as good as I want it, but. And then there's a cross beam. And that starts that part of it. Now we'll keep looking, because as I see it, I can almost see that same kind of warm color up here. That looks about right. Probably a little too small of a brush. It'd be better if I had a number. Here's an 8. Let's try that. What do you say? And loosen the paint up a little bit because it's stiff. I can feel it. The Naples keeps it feeling like sunlight. So we're going to right up the very tip. Right? And pretty thin. And not quite as bright, but still up there on the roof. This is where you break that up. I was telling you earlier, you don't just stay one way. So as I'm picking up dirty paint, I'm using it really light up on that back edge. I'm not sure why, but it is. And some light spots happening right here. A little bit here. Here. A little bit. What about? That spot wasn't there, but I don't care. Leave it there. Anything like this that you can do that'll add a little interesting character, do it. If you go too far with it, take it away. Okay, to me, that feels pretty good. And since I'm the judge of this right now, I'm going to leave it alone. We're going to move into some other areas. I think these could be lighter. And I've got that light blue mixed up. So I'm just using the color I already had mixed. It's interesting because you never know. You think you're bright enough, and you never know till you get it far enough along. Probably a little too light now, but I have to live with it right now. And on the side of the building, there's a little of that light creeping down right here. And there. And then it goes into that more of a bluer color because it's in shadow. See how much more I want to add into this before I get into other areas, because I still have a lot to deal with other than just the barn. I'm going to leave. I think I'm going to leave it alone for a little bit here. I can bring a little bit of that light there and a little bit right there. Leave it alone for a little bit here, okay? I want to come forward so we get everything laid in the next 15 minutes. And a lot of this is a big shadow, and then there's some bushes across. So let's get that kind of big shadowy area in. You have to, this is where you have to look beyond what's obvious right in front of you. And it's pretty cool. Cool, not meaning neat cool. Cool meaning temperature. Even more so, even a little darker. Okay. And it really looks like it extends really all the way over here. And all the way over here. And as we come up front before I get some of the foliage, and I don't know how much of that I'm going to use, but I need a base. So once again, kind of dry. And then there's this area back in shadow. Right. Little darker, maybe a little bit brown into it. So it's blue, but it's not. But we're going to take it from there. Yeah. That comes down, kind of fills this area, maybe a little bit there. I threw some green into it. So now I'm going to take a few little liberties right here. I'm going to take this dark mass. Some of these things you can do quick. All right. When you get into those, it's get them in there quick, because put your time into where the time is going to be the most valuable. In this case, it probably is going to be the barn. All right. But okay. And there's some there is some foliage back here, right? And it's kind of a little bit more brown than the blue. Right in there. Up over. It's got a little bit of an edge light, so we'll put that on there at the end. Okay, now I'm going to add a little bit of light to it. There's a lot going on. It's, you look at this in the beginning, you go, well, it's, and then as you get into it, you realize, heck, there's a lot going on in there. So I got a little bit of foliage there. I don't want it to stand out too much. A little bit right there. It kind of cools off a little bit. And some of it even goes a little green. Just looking at all the value and color variations as I move along this edge. And try and be as close or as kind of as relatively accurate as you can, even though when you're quick, you're not going to be 100% accurate. But if you come up, because it is foliage, and foliage can be whatever color it happens to be, it doesn't always have to be an exact color. That if you get the values about right, you can make it work. It goes back to that color does the, or value does the work, color gets the credit, kind of a concept, is that your color is something that it's something that we all develop a feel for. We develop a feel for certain colors. And that's what makes each artist different. I mean, every artist is going to pick a color that kind of works for them, but it may not work for someone else. Okay, I want to keep moving along, get a little bit of light on this ground plane here. A little bit back there's a little piece of light. Ochre, Naples, white. Probably a little bit too warm, but I don't care. Piece of light right there. It's bigger than I wanted. I really wanted it more. Maybe I can cut it down a little bit. There we go. And let's really play with the warm light hitting on the ground plane right here. Right up to about here. Weeds. All right. The consistency of the paint was just about right for me to do those strokes with, so I didn't have to play with it a lot. I can see it get a little bit more yellow, so I brought a little bit more of a yellow into the color, and it's dappled. And right about here, it's warmer though. So I put some more ochre into it. Every time I'm putting that brush down, I'm picking up that dirty paint. So I want to keep some of it. I want it intermixing a little bit, but some of it I want clean. Let's go along in here, get a little bit of light right here. This is a wonderful brush to do this kind of stuff with, because the bristles on it are so frayed that it gives me the character and the quality without having to, overwork it. Once again, let the brush do the work. Gonna stand back. This still looks really vacant. I want to have enough time to go back into that. But let's get more of the ground plane, yellow and white. And it's a little green right about here. And when you can spot those and use them, it just adds a little bit more, for lack of a better word, believability to your piece. Just looking to see if it's working. So, okay. I want to come down a little further here before I start working on this foreground stuff. Where am I at time-wise? Well, I wanted to be a little bit more ahead of where I am. I always want that. I always wish you were. And as we move across, I'm going to warm it up. A lot of this stuff is really fun to just keep almost as abstract as you can. Now it's like, see what you get by with. See how little you can do to indicate the feeling that you're after. Okay, now I'm just going to start scrubbing because this is really kind of take an additional. I have another one of those gesso brushes. I'm going to take white and Naples, maybe a little bit of raw sienna. No medium whatsoever, and see if I can just rub some of what I want into the painting. It's quite a bit warmer. So I threw some cad orange and some more raw sienna right about here. This is the stuff you can do, and if you don't like it, you just redo it. You just add more paint. This is where it's advantageous to have a color down below because you intermix. And these are colors. Generally, you wouldn't sit there and worry about mixing exactly. Over on the left side, it's much darker. So I picked up some orange and I picked up some blue. And we're going to just put some and we'll put the lights in. I haven't put the lights in yet. Yeah, that's okay. So now I'm going to take the same color I was just using, add turp to it, mix it in with the other colors that I was using over in here, and start to figure out what I want to do. So I'm going to look right here. I've got a couple of nice bright spots. Another down in here. Throw a little bit more ochre into it. Was feeling a little greener than I wanted. I like the fact I haven't mixed my colors really good because if they're intermixing as I lay them down. Right in here, a lot of, don't try and be too neat with it because it's not neat. Okay, I'm going to try something. I think it'll work. It should work well enough. Take a palette knife. I take white and maples, mix it into a color I already have, so it's very light. White and maples, and a lot of medium. In this case, it's going to be turp. This is my medium because I really need to thin it out. And we're going to put some of these weeds in. And I'll probably put some of the brush too. I'm going to move this just a second, raise it up so I can get my knife all the way to the bottom. And that way I can bring it down, over, or I can bring it up. It's starting to work okay. It's working like I wanted it to. Being very loose, very abstract. Now I can also take a liner if I have it, or I can pick up almost any brush. I have this one watercolor brush I occasionally use if I can find it here. It was here. Oh, no, that's not it. Okay, never mind. I don't see it. Let me see if I've got a liner. I have a liner. Okay, I can use a liner if I want it for some of this stuff. But you don't want to do it all with a brush or all with a knife. Sometimes it just looks phony. Again, it's got to be very loose. Your paint's got to be very loose so it'll go down. Otherwise, there it goes. It's almost like painting watercolor. And I like it. Tell you what I really like is it comes up and overlaps the barn right about here. And that's always nice. Whenever you have things that kind of take the knife and do a few little. The knife kind of is nice because it'll skip sometimes, and that's kind of the illusion you have when you look at some of this stuff. You don't see every twig so sometimes the skipping of the knife actually conveys a more accurate feel than you would have otherwise. Like that's way too thick. When you get these that are way too thick like that, take your background and just chisel it back. You know, if something looks wrong, take it out. It's the same thing no matter what. So I'm going to add a few little touches in here before I go in. I want to go back into this background a little bit. Let's see here. Where are we at? We got about 30 minutes, a little over 30 minutes left. So I feel fair. Do I feel really good and confident? No, not at all. But I feel that I can get it working well enough. So standing back right now, it seems to work well enough. I'm not crazy. I just noticed it about the orange on the top of that roof. I'm not crazy about that bow right there. I would rather have it sink in, meaning I'd rather have the background do that. In case you look at it and you go, wow, that color's off. It is. I try not to worry about that because by the time I come over it enough times, hopefully you won't notice it. So we're going to go back a little bit into the background. We're going to put kind of a little bit into these trees. Working with a small brush sometimes is not the smartest thing to do. I'm going to go back to my number, believe it or not, my number 10. You start picking when you work with a small brush. And a painting like this, it's not a picky painting. All right, now there's some tree trunks that overlap this. come up here. Up. Come on, I may have to go back to my small brush. And I do. Let's try it this one. There. So you're just kind of matching the color that's there, truthfully. And then we're trying to give the feeling of, and you may have to paint some foliage in there too. You can't just paint one type of thing. But what it does is it places the trees in front. We do the same thing up in here a little bit. Right in here, I went too strong. I'm going to paint some negative spaces, tree holes, if you will. Take this number 8. Go back to kind of what I used for my initial sky color, which is white, Naples, and blue. White, blue. There, that's pretty good, I think. I just want to be close. Okay, we're going to kind of that starts to work. I could always refine that more if I have the time. I just want to keep moving. I get some nice, beautiful warms up in here. The smoke comes from there. Some tree holes back in here too. So we can put a little bit, oops, one there. It's starting to work. I'd like the smoke, if I could get it to come up. Still not getting it. It's got to be a little darker of a blue. Let's try this. I'm going to try to use my finger. I hate to do too much of this because it's like you're trying to blend. And I'm not, I'm just trying to give it feeling like there's some smoke back there that gives it. And there's some light on his planes right back in here. Okay. Now I don't, that color of that mountain bothers me. I thought it was really good. I don't think it is. So I'm lightening it and I'm warming it up, particularly as it moves to the left. For some reason, it's pretty warm right here. So I'm using the color that's down there and I'm adding a color on top of it. And I want to blend back into the smoke. And then it might be the sun just might be grazing the top of that because I see it getting kind of orange. So I push this pretty far to an orange. Do I like it? Yeah, I do. Lighten up the rest of the mountain. Now the tops of those trees right there, they get a little warmer and a little lighter. Probably can, some of the stuff I know cannot be seen on screen. It's because it is so subtle, but it's these trees right here. So start to amplify some of the string back in there. Like the light on this is quite a bit lighter. I'm keeping an eye on my time. So I want to have 15 minutes to go back and add some posts, maybe a touch or two in the barn. But so I'm keeping an eye on the time. We want to get the edge of those trees because I said it. If I was lucky, there we go. A little bit. That works pretty well. Let's keep going with it. And I'm going to add some little yellow of that color and strengthen it a little bit more down here. Now I just noticed something too. I'm just going to grab any old brush that I got here. A little bit of warm, because I got a little bit of light sneaking from down in here to down in here. So it doesn't look so empty. I see that down in here, down here. A lot of those areas you can keep pulling. But I do want to, and I hope I'm not strengthening this too much. I haven't stood back to check. Might be bringing it out a little too much. And I'm going to take a little more ochre into that green. And we're going to bring the trees, just the edges. They're catching a little light. That feels pretty good. Now I've brightened all this, so this doesn't look that bright, right? So what do you got to do? Got to brighten that. So take my yellow and my white. Let's see what happens. That's pretty good. I'll take a little orange to that yellow. Probably a little too much, but let's, that doesn't bother me. More yellow, white.
Trimming trees that were knocked over.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Trimming trees outside, I can hear it. I think I got knocked over in the last storm with the winds. So if I want to bring the roof out a little bit, I can actually go back with that green that I was using a little bit earlier and let the foliage catch a little bit more light all the way here. And that makes that stand out a little bit. Now, I want to go back. I want to get back into the barn in just a second. But before I do, I want to put a couple of these posts in. I like this one particularly. All right, so we're going to put a nice light side on it back. Okay, one there. I don't know how many more I really want to put in there. That one really comes all the way down. I think I need to, the shadow side of that needs to be a little bolder. So I just took some blue back into the brown and green color I already had. And it's a fence, so maybe I'll scratch it, huh? It didn't work. I don't like that. Sometimes it'll work when you just scratch it. Sometimes it doesn't. It depends on the color you have underneath. I obviously had too strong of a color. It's a little bit of a post there. There's some right in here. Posts sometimes give a little bit of perspective. There's 2 or 3 right in here. There's one right about here. One about here. And then a different type of post right there. And then one right there. And they receive, they're very white. So they receive a lot of light. So we're going to put 1, 2, 3. Get those in there. If I want to add some more weeds, so it feels a little bit more correct there. And if I want to, I will put, I don't know if this is going to work. Here, let me try with a knife. I was going to use a liner, but a liner, I tend to make my lines too thick with the liner. With a knife, it might just work. That's good. Let's see. Just so get a little bit of a feel of that fence there. So I'm going to try and take my last. I think I'm going to go back in here and do a little bit more line work with the liner. Be a little bit more careful. Some of it you want chaotic, and some of it you want a little bit more care. That's generally the case. Okay. I want to go into the barn. The hill behind it on the right, believe it or not, I'm going to cool it down and lighten it just a little bit. A little bit more blue, a little bit more white. Let's see what this does. Actually, I like the value change a lot. Sure pops that barn out a lot. Probably do some back in here too, kind of where I see foliage. Feels okay. Now I'm going to spend really pretty much the end of my time working on the barn, since that's our focal point. So I got that pretty light, but I'm going to go even lighter if I can. Right there, back there. And the top, I want to pop it a little bit, but it's, whoops. Did I mess things up? I want to, there we go, keep it kind of cool. And then bring it up to that point right up there. Now, it's the in-between tones that I might need to deal with, meaning tones like this. And if we just chop it up even more than it already is, we're just going to add texture to the rough. And in doing so, hopefully improve upon the values and colors that I started with. It's starting to work. Like, you notice I said starting. So what else do I want to do? I want to add a little bit more information to the front. Probably a little more texture in the boards, since that's our kind of focal point anyway, is that barn. So we want to bring, that's too strong. So we just lose it. I just had it too light. A little bit on this side. A little bit more down in here because it is down closer to us. So if I have to pronounce it a little bit more with value contrast, I will do that. And just noticed it, didn't catch it earlier. Just notice it, a little bit of detailing in the shadows. Right there. And here. Not interesting that I didn't catch it earlier. Not unusual. A little bit of a light being right. All this little touches take it that much more towards the what I refer to as believability. And it's lighter back in there. It's like you're almost looking inside the barn. So I could probably pronounce that by exaggerating the value contrast there, there, there. And even lighter still. So all these little things, they add up. They add up and hopefully give this whole image more, I hate to keep using that word believability, but it's really what I mean. You know, it's interesting because I do teach a class in illustration, having been an illustrator for so many years. And one of the things I'm always hitting the illustrators on is what I call readability. Now, it's much more crucial in illustration than it is in painting. But what I mean by that is the image that you're portraying reading well? Or is it, you know, falling down and not kind of coming off as strong as it could? So I'm going to take, now I give another layer. This is the advantage. If you get it done enough time, you can give another layer, putting a little bit more light on some of these things. So popping those lights as I see them. Most of this sits behind these weeds that are coming up. So you want to kind of get those in there really before you hit those weeds. So if I wipe out a few weeds, I wipe out a few weeds. And then I come back with my liner or with my knife, whatever, and add. If your paint's thin enough, I've got it just about right here. You can make it as effortless as you possibly can. You want to make it look like the paint just kind of fell off your brush if you can. Well, I bet the barn reading better than it does in the my reference, that's for sure. And most of that has to do with value. The value that I did in the trees back behind. I'm gonna brighten that up just a little bit more. So when I hit it on the other side, I probably needed to come back on this side a little bit. Just not a lot, a little bit. Fades away. Up in here. Like even the top of those trees, which I mentioned earlier, had quite a bit of warmth to them. I can strengthen now if I want to. That's pretty strong. I don't know if I want it that orange. Let's try more ochre in there. Start with one tone and then you look at those tones and you say, do I need to break them up? And yeah, I do. It's like this. I could hit that foliage part again. So I'm going all over, scouring all over the painting, looking for the areas that I don't think are working as well as they should. So I'm bringing more foliage. That's holding together okay. It's one of those that when you go at the end, how do I feel about it, you know? And it's okay. Sometimes I think they come out better. This one came out okay. It might be the scale. It might be my cold. Always find your excuse. I used to tell students that. Don't give me lame excuses. If you give me an excuse, make it a damn good one. My excuse today is my cold. A little too strong. But whether they come out good, okay, or really good, you're always learning for things that you can move on to in your next venture, which is what painting's all about, you guys. It's not just about you're a great painter, everything you do turns out great. It's about some things are going to turn out better, some things are not going to turn out as good, but hopefully you learn something and you can apply that as you move on. I'll every now and then discover a color that I realize, boy, I could use that in other types of painting that I do. And, you know, I'll use it. Put a little bit more light over there because I added more space than I did in the than there was in the reference. So I added a little bit more light over there. Landscapes are cool because you can really learn brush usage, a lot of different kind of brush usage in landscapes, more than in figure. Figure is a much more controlling for me. You know, I shouldn't speak for every artist because I don't know how other artists feel about it. But in my way of thinking and my way of working, figure work takes a different kind of control than landscape. Landscape takes a certain kind of trust and freedom. And see, I knew. Remember, I told you guys. You should have told me. I wish you could work if you were all tuned in so that I could hear you, you would have told me, you made those too light.
Made what too light?
These,
I can't see what those
they're
are.
coming out like lights and not like kind of. Yeah, I knocked it back enough where it doesn't bother me as much. This bothers me that I left a lot of that board there. And I can just mix up almost any of these colors and kind of come in with some negatives. Sometimes the color of the board you use works, sometimes it doesn't. So I've had people ask me, do you choose the color you work on based on what you're painting? The answer is no. I generally don't know what I'm going to be painting, and I pre-tone my boards, so I don't know exactly if it's going to work, if it's not going to work, you know. So that's why for me, neutrals work. But I know a couple of artists that work on bright reds, and it works for them. I've done that too. I just find I have more control, and I don't fall into any specific kind of natural rut because I rely on a color underneath. So it also becomes a style for some people, which I think is great. My style is kind of what I like to think of as do the best you can with what you got. That feels better. It felt a little vacant back there. I could probably bring a few little tree trunks over the smoke if I wanted to do any last thing. I think we're just about out of time. Probably too dark. Let's try it. Yeah, I am too dark. You don't want to call too much. You don't want them to be too perfect. But I think I'm basically there. I'm actually basically here. But I mean, in terms of making somewhat of a complete statement, which is pretty much what I was trying to do. It's a nice kind of a loose barn. And overall, it does what I hoped it would do. I do see several things that I could touch up, and I probably won't do too much touch up on this, simply because I'm blaming my cold. So I've got my excuse planned. What's yours? And with that, I ought to just say, I hope all of you, at least with this crummy voice, it's kind of cool, you know, I could do a little Kenny Rogers thing here. Because I'm so damn raspy. But if you guys get something out of this, that's really why I started doing these in the first place 80 weeks ago. This is week 80, everybody. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? So I have fun. I've learned a lot. Hope you guys have, and we'll see you next week. And happy painting, everybody.